Good morning, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome to a breaking news podcast. That is right. This is not a scheduled podcast. Breaking news means it's just happening. And this has been going on this Wednesday morning for a couple hours now. And that is the news that the Pittsburgh Steelers are indeed trading George Pickens. Where? To the Dallas Cowboys. For what? We'll talk about that. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Dave Schofield and Brian Davis. Dave, what's up?
Hey, fellas. It's nice to see you guys in a more interesting light. First, I don't think I've ever done a morning podcast like this before live, but this is an interesting one. It was, the reports came out. We discussed it briefly on the Scobro show Tuesday night, and kind of dismissed it a little bit because the question was, why now? But now, as things are coming in, you're starting to get some of those answers.
Okay, Brian, what's up?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I was a little bit confused by all of this, but I feel like this is one of those last resorts, and they know internally more than what we know, and this is probably the best out of what internally is a bad situation.
Okay, so we're going to do knee-jerk reactions first. I'm going to go first because I just want to get some things off my chest here. A lot of people on social media right now are saying this, why wouldn't they do this before the draft? Okay, Tim Benz, who's on our Fans First Sports Network, his podcast, Breakfast with Benz, he even said this is ridiculous. Why would they do this now? All reports that I've read is that they tried to trade him during the draft and they didn't get the compensation they felt they wanted or needed for him. So you don't make a bad deal. Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, because I did read it was from the New York Times that the Steelers could not get any higher than a 4th round pick during the draft. I read that this morning.
They were looking to get into day 2. And so that's not a day 2 pick. So they didn't make the move. So what do? They were not trading him. Dallas calls after the draft. Okay, we want a 3rd round pick, because let's remember, everyone's like, well, they're going to get a 3rd round comp pick. Well, the comp picks come at the very end of the draft. And also of that round, there's no guarantee, as Dave has talked about ad nauseum this entire offseason, that they would get a 3rd round pick for him based on playing time and all this stuff. So all this stuff that's going on, keep in mind that the Steelers were trying to trade this guy all offseason. That should tell you all that you need to know about what's happening internally. An organization that tolerated so much for so long from so many different players, they've been shopping this guy. So I don't know what happened. I haven't heard anything in particular in terms of whether there was something that broke the straw that broke the camel's back or anything like that. But for me, I saw this and I wasn't shocked. The fact that they're getting Dallas's 3rd pick, I'll let Dave go over the compensation. Their 3rd round pick, and they're actually getting a pick swap of sorts. I'm okay with it. I honest to God, I'm okay with it, because get rid of the headache. You already have one potentially in DK Metcalf. Get rid of it. I'm sorry. That's the way I feel. Dave, I'll let you go. If you want to talk about compensation, then we'll go around the horn.
All right. The compensation is that they, in next year's draft, 2026, receive a 3rd round draft pick. This is all reported. And then the following year, in 2027, they will do a pick swap where they will receive a 5th round pick from Dallas, where they're giving up their 6th round pick. There was a report by Adam Schefter that it was the 6th was in the next draft. He since corrected that. I think it was just a typo. So that's how that looks. I find it very interesting because it's very divided in Steelers Nation. I know a number of people that have said, I don't know if I can trust this franchise if they keep a player like George Pickens. That's how much they despised his actions, his showing up late to games, things of that nature. I think some of it was funny when he based, the interview when I can't even remember now because it's just blanking on me, the word that he basically didn't know, and therefore he kind of contradicted himself in his own interview. But bottom line is, you have to remember this: he was not an Omar Khan draft pick. And I think if they're going to be a headache and it's a new GM, they're not just going to put up with someone that's a headache that they don't want to extend, that's on the last year of their deal. I know there's people that talk about, well, they could have got a 3rd round comp pick. I don't think the Steelers are thinking teams are going to want to pay George Pickens a lot of money, because they sure don't. So unless they pay him a lot of money and he plays a lot of snaps, he's probably not going to be a 3rd round draft pick or comp pick. But to me, even more than that, that also means that the Steelers have to be sellers next offseason and not buyers in order to even get that back. So the fact that they got the compensation they were looking for then makes sense for it. But does this leave the Steelers in a bit of a situation where they're much like last year, where is there more of a hole wide receiver? Right now, you have to say, yeah, it what looked like it could be a really big strength with having both him and DK Metcalf. And we even talked about, you kind of you can feel better about the Steelers wide receiver situation. We talked about that last night's show. Now it's not so much. It's not that there's nobody. I still think they're in better shape than what they were last year, but I don't know that it's much better shape. I think DK Metcalf is an upgraded George Pickens. So, but there's still questions there. And now the question is, doing this now, not during the draft when you knew you would want to then get a wide receiver. What are you going to do? I'm not sure. I'd like to say, well, they'll do something, but then last year they didn't. So it just didn't work out. So there's going to be more to the Steelers wide receiver story throughout this offseason.
All right, Brian, what was your knee-jerk reaction?
My knee-jerk reaction was, I guess this is what they had to do. Maybe I have too much faith in this organization. I just feel that, like both of you said, there was a headache the whole way. I don't think DK is really going to be the headache that a lot of people think he's going to be, but you can't have two alpha dogs. And George Pickens was an alpha dog. I don't know if he would have done well being a second banana. How's he going to be a second banana to CD Lamb? I have no idea. I mean, I think that is a 1-year deal there. I really think that I don't think he's going to last in Dallas either. I think this is somebody said on the live chat, and I kind of believe it, when are other teams going to realize you don't trade for Steelers wide receivers? I kind of like that, but I just don't. I think this was just an impossible situation, and I think they got the best of what they could have. Now, there's going to be a lot of criticism, like you said. I know Dave said the best they could have done was a 4th-round pick. Yeah, you don't want that. Really, they were fine with what their formula is for next year. This might turn into the situation Dave Schofield talks about all the time about the Santonio Holmes trade that turned into Antonio Brown, that turned into all these different things. And remember, they only got a 5th-round pick out of Santonio Holmes a year after he was the MVP of the Super Bowl and had a fantastic season. So, they get rid of problems. And sure, you might be in the same spot as last year, but are you really? Because DK Metcalf seems to be an upgrade and more proven than George Pickens.
That's a good point. Now, my buddy and Brian and Dave have done work with him as well. Wesley Coleman, he lives in the Dallas area, and he sent me a text earlier this morning about this. He said that local reporters are freaking out right now in Dallas because they said this guy he's drama. And I said, just think about this. And there's been some people in the live chat that have said, what the heck's going on? You can hate Mike Tomlin all you want, but Mike Tomlin has proven time and time again that he's capable of reining in disgruntled players and helping them become at least cooperative enough to be able to be productive. If they're wanting to ship this guy away, that tells you a lot. And so if I was another team, I would be very concerned as well. Then I also saw that, this is from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, that the Cowboys at this time are not talking about a new contract with George Pickens, letting him play out the year. There could be a serious moment where we look back and say, how did we ever get a 3rd-round pick for George Pickens? Like that could actually happen. If he doesn't pan out in Dallas, they don't give him another contract. He doesn't get a big deal on the open market. He ends up going the way of Chase Claypool. We could look at this totally different. And so, in my honest opinion, ever since they were never able to solidify the quarterback position, which they still really haven't, 2025 has been, it's a retooling, rebuilding year, whatever you want to call it. You got to get rid of some of this stuff and you got to try to capitalize on what you can. I'm not upset with this move. I'm not upset at all. I'll dive into this, I'm sure, further on other podcasts and on writing on steelcurtainnetwork.com. But the one thing that I will say, and I said this in our random channel on our Slack channel, I said there was a moment where I was done with George Pickens, and it was last year. It was during the right after the Christmas Day game, and they're doing this stupid celebration with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I mean, the Steelers just got lambasted at home on prime time on a special Netflix special, which was viewed by millions of people. And they're having their stupid red velvet cake footballs, and and George Pickens interrupts the entire interview to dap up Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. I was like, I'm done with this guy. This guy, it was just one moment.
And we didn't know at the time that he had showed up only a half hour before the game.
And that only made things worse. And everyone's like, well, Jeff, he just daps at the players. At that time, during an interview, if you really wanted to talk with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce that much, just wait till they're done. He did that on screen on purpose. I was like, this guy, I'm done. I'm done with him. Trade him before the draft, after the draft. I don't care. Sorry. That's just my take. But Dave, what else did you want to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the timing of it, I think, is strange. That's why when the report first came out last night, I'm like, unless this is something credible, I'm not putting much into it, because does it make sense to do it now when you're not getting anything that could help you this year in the draft? Would you be why do it a week after the draft, 2 weeks after the draft, I guess? Then just maybe during the season when teams are more desperate, if you go that far. But honestly, if he was that much of a problem, I understand that they would want to do that. Also, the Steelers might look at George Pickens and say, we don't know how he's going to handle not being offered another contract with us. That could then make his value drop big time. If he doesn't come to OTAs because he doesn't want a contract, guess what? Down goes the value. If he doesn't then doesn't show up to training camp or holds in or whatever, down goes the value. So after thinking about that, when as much as I could this morning, I'm like, this could have been because they know he's a bit of a loose cannon. This could have been a fear of, man, we're going to get absolutely nothing for him if we wait based on his pattern of behavior. The safer bet is to just go ahead and move it now if we're going to get a day 2 pick. I will say this, though. There was plenty of people that said they both play the X wide receiver. Can you play them both? I always said, you find a way. You find a way to put your talent on the field. I am going to be disappointed because it was kind of exciting to see what those two guys on the field were going to do together. But at the same time, I'm not the one who has to deal with the headache day in and day out with them doing that. So to me, we can all react how we want to right now. Time will tell in the long run whether or not this was a brilliant move, this was a terrible move, or it was either way. It was fine either way. There's so much more to this story that's going to play out over the next several seasons, most likely, that we'll actually be able to critique this even better.
Brian, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm kind of sad. I'm sad that this whole thing didn't work out. But I accept the trade, and I kind of think that it will work out better for the Steelers. I got a text. Somebody in the live chat right now is one of our affiliates for Fans First Sports Network. It's B. Michael Davis. I asked him his thoughts, and he is a Cowboys fan. He does Cowboys podcast. His exact words were, needed talent at wide receiver too, but putting Pickens with a first-time head coach is odd. They've drafted a lot of team captains and high-character guys lately, so to go after Pickens is a different move. And third is pretty high if it's a one-year rental too, and who knows how much money he's going to try to get. So with that being said, I don't think they're celebrating in Dallas this move, like Jeff, you said that Wesley said it earlier.
I will say this. There's someone in particular that I follow closely. When he says something, typically it's something you want to take note of, and that's Dale Lawley. And I worked with Dale briefly at another location, and he's a super nice guy, super glued in. He's an editor of the Steelers website and stuff. But Dale even tweeted out, he said, I wouldn't be shocked if another trade is made. And I think that's something that people are kind of not thinking about here. Everyone thinks that all these picks that they're accruing for 2026 are just for maybe moving up and getting a quarterback. And that could absolutely be something. They also could be trying to move other assets to get a player that's under contract currently. I don't want to go into another Brandon Ayuk situation like we had last offseason. That was exhausting. I don't want to do that again. But at the same time, if you're wondering where do they go from here, there is a chance that they might still be trying to find a receiver who maybe he's on a team that's deep with wide receiver and they're willing to part ways for not too much. It could be a very similar situation parallel to what the Steelers and George Pickens and Dallas Cowboys are. But I will also be having an article out later today on SteelCurtainNetwork.com as the best free agents on the market at Steelers positions of need. So you can go check that out. That'll be later on this morning. And let's get this let's get these dingo dollars up here. Our buddy Steeler Nation Australia, Marky D, give us $5 dingo dollars. Says, did the season start in May? Yinzers are freaking out. Shall be right, mate. All right. Yeah, no, I think people were just disappointed. And it sucks that I did my DEF CON levels and I said the fan DEF CON levels went up in a positive direction. Not this morning. They were just plummeting back down.
Well, I think it depends on the fans. Like I said, I don't know that they were the majority, but I even had people emailing me that said, I don't know that I could watch this team with George Pickens anymore. I love the Steelers so much. And I'm like, I'm kind of the one, if you love them, you're going to watch even when they're terrible, things like that, just because it's what you do. But they're just like, this is so not what Pittsburgh Steelers football was all about. The more that things are coming out, I never took it to that extreme. You know, I'm going to cheer for the guy when he's wearing black and gold, but I will acknowledge that there was a lot more to him than this. I'm sure Cowboys fans are split, you know, kind of like Steelers fans, that with something like this. But you also have to remember, and from their perspective, maybe they're looking that maybe they can at least get some compensatory return if he leaves after this year, if he can have a good year with them. If he goes there and it's a nightmare, then I don't think he's going to get a decent contract either. So when there's people happy and sad on both sides, maybe that just goes to show that maybe it's a good deal, or even maybe it's just so much of an unknown that neither side feels great about it.
Brian, I want to ask you a quick question here. We've seen obviously since 2023, Omar Khan drafts. He did not draft George Pickens. We know this. If Omar Khan and his front office were at the helm in 2022, do you think that George Pickens would have been selected?
I can't say for sure, but my gut says no. I would probably think no, because they have gone in a higher character direction, and a lot of those guys still remain. You know, I know it's only been a couple drafts, but no, I don't think so. I don't even think Kenny Pickett would have been drafted. I think that was a different regime as well. I just think I just think Omar Khan does things a different way, and he's getting a lot of criticism. There's a lot of fans, like, you got to check the shower rods. You've got to check the ledges right now. There's a lot of fans that think that this organization is horrible, and this is another horrible move. And so you're right, Jave. Everybody is split because there's Dallas people coming out on our podcast saying, yeah, no, we love it. Check other things. We love it. So it just depends who you are. I don't think Omar Khan makes this move. I think that's the reason Omar Khan shipped him out. And he can take the criticism of only getting a third-round pick, but he's also a guy that got a second-round pick out of Claypool. This was, I said this at the beginning of the show, this was a last resort deal. They don't want to go with that distraction. It would have been fun to see what those guys could have done together, but it would have been devastating to see what they could have imploded like together. Yeah. I just showed my son last night. Somebody has a T-shirt out already with George Pickens and DK Metcalf dressed as the stepbrothers in that portrait, and he said, "So, what isn't that like Crash Out Brothers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what they're calling them. I don't think it's going to be that bad." Not knowing that I'd wake up to him being gone. So, you know, I am bummed because I wanted to see the Pickens thing through, but I wanted Pickens to be something that I don't think he can be. And that's has nothing to do with talent. That has everything to do with headspace.
Yeah. And Steeler fans out there, listen, you got to be able to see the forest through the trees. And it's a situation where you have to say, okay, if they would have said, if we get a good deal, it gets us a day 2 pick in this year's draft, we'll trade him. And if we don't, he's going to be on the team. They didn't do that. They still entertained calls and they traded him anyways. That means they didn't want him. So whatever you think, it really doesn't matter first and foremost. But at the same time, that shows you how bad it was. That, like Brian and Dave alluded to, they didn't want to deal with all the other stuff. Maybe him not showing up to anything in the offseason, maybe only showing up to mandatory minicamp, holding in because he wants a new deal. They didn't want to do that again. They did it with Deontay Johnson. That didn't work out in their favor. So they just wanted to, okay, we're going to cut ties. I think that's more telling than anything else, more than compensation, more than anything, was the fact that the Steelers were like, we just want to get rid of him. So let's do some final thoughts here. I know Dave has to go. So Dave, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, anyone find it ironic that what the Steelers are getting in return is a 3rd and a 5th?
Oh, nice. Antonio Brown. In case people don't forget.
Just put it in the live chat right when I said that. I love it. So, yeah, final thoughts are, it's one of those things that how much you're willing to put up with while you have to versus how much are you glad you don't have to put up with it when you don't have to anymore. This is something that's probably going to affect the players and coaches way more than the fans because, as some people brought up, well, other people have had character issues before. Pickens, it wasn't necessarily even character. It was on field and in locker room antics and attitude, which is a different monster, which can affect the team. So I do I want to say I wish him well? I don't know. I hope he can get straightened out for his own benefit as someone who was brought in by the Steelers. But bottom line is, I'm more about let's keep going forward. No, the Steelers are not tanking. Just stop the talk. That's just ridiculous. That you got to now say, okay, what else are they going to do to make this room better with their limited options going into 2025?
All right, Brian, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Somebody just put on the live chat, 5th in 2027, though. Not necessarily. Remember, there's reports that they're looking to package some things, and that might be one of the first things that goes if that happens. I'm just saying that Dave really hit it on the head with the whole character issues. Right now, look, and I said this at the beginning of the show, but I didn't say it quite this way. Right now, most of us, including me, have our face up against the window. We're fogging up the window and we're just looking in and we're trying to catch a glimpse of what's going on. Inside that room, they're dealing with a whole lot more and we just don't know. So right now, while I'm licking a window, they're licking their wounds from a guy that is really causing chaos in that locker room, and we know he is. And the reason we know he is we've heard from Minka. We've heard all these he didn't say names, but we've heard all these things about talent and expectations and everything throughout last year. And he was a big sore spot for a lot of the veteran players.
Well said, guys. I've given enough of my opinion. Make sure you check out all of our work at steelcurtainnetwork.com and at the Steel Curtain Network podcast side of things. Thank you all for tuning in live. Thank you all for checking us out on the audio side. We'll be back later on with another podcast, I'm sure. But in the meantime, thanks for listening, Dave. Brian, thanks for attending this early morning podcast. Take it easy, everyone.